By the third stranger at my door that week, I'd stopped answering it. The first one came on a Tuesday with gas station flowers, asking for a woman by a name I'd never heard. At the house I'd rented for 6 years. I told him he had the wrong place. He turned his phone around to show me he didn't. By the way, I'm Curtis, 38. I fix ovens and washers and the odd dead furnace around Tulsa, which matters later because I'm a guy who trusts a thing he can open up and see. What I couldn't open up was on that man's screen, my face. My real face lifted straight off my own Facebook, the one where I'm holding a walleye up at Grand Lake, my name under it, my street, and a line I never wrote. Home alone most nights after 10. Come by. Don't text first, just knock. It took me too long to understand what I was looking at. Too long. 3 days before the flowers, a woman I'd matched with had gone quiet. Rhea, she called herself. We talked maybe a week, all of it easy, nothing that pinged me. Then one night she got strange about my address, said she liked knowing a man had a real place, a real door. I laughed it off and didn't give it. Next morning she was gone. Unmatched, profile wiped. And here's the part that gets me. I felt bad about it. I thought I'd said something wrong. I actually felt bad. Then the strangers started, and they did not stop. Men mostly, and mostly at night. Some sheepish, some not. One older guy just stood on my step grinning until I shut the door on it. The thing is, none of them thought they were doing anything strange. They'd been invited. They had it right there on their phones in my own words that weren't mine. Thursday, close to midnight, a younger one got angry. I told him there was no woman here, and he looked at me like I was the one running a game, like I'd wasted his whole night on purpose. When I went to close the door, he put his hand flat against it and shoved it back into my shoulder. Not a huge thing. I felt it the next morning, though, and I'm not a small man. What rattled me wasn't the shove. It was that he was sure. He believed he'd been wronged, and you can't reason with somebody who's certain. I called the app. They pulled the profile down while I was still on the phone, and for about 6 hours that felt like winning. By the next evening it was back. Same photo, same address. Brand new account. They killed that one too. Another one climbed up in its place. And that's when the real shape of it landed on me. Somebody wasn't posting me once and wandering off. Somebody was sitting there watching the takedowns happen, putting me back up each time, patient as a man feeding a stove. One of them said the thing I still hear. A polite guy, older, showed me the listing on his phone and said, you look a little different than your other pictures. Other pictures. There were more shots of me on that thing than I'd ever put online anywhere. Somebody hadn't just grabbed a photo. Somebody had been collecting me for a while. It wasn't only nights either. A woman came on the Saturday, the middle of the afternoon, apologetic, checking her phone against my house number, and she gave me this pitying look when I told her there was no such woman here. Somehow daylight made it worse. And when I finally read the whole listing cold, it had more of me than a stranger could guess. It knew I drive a work van. It knew I'm out on calls most weekdays. They hadn't just grabbed my face. They'd learned my week, and they were telling people when the house sat empty. So I put a camera on the doorbell. The good kind, the one that talks to your phone in the middle of the night. For a few nights it was only the parade, and I'd lie there in the dark watching men I'd never met walk up my steps, read my door, and drift off. Then late past 1 in the morning my phone buzzed. Motion. A man was standing at the end of my walk, not on the step, down by the sidewalk, right at the edge where the streetlight quits in the dark, no flowers. He wasn't squinting at his phone to check the address the way the others always did. He wasn't doing anything at all. He was looking at the house. I watched him on that little screen with my thumb over the talk button, and I couldn't make myself press it. And then he turned his head, slow, and he looked straight into the lens, right at me, and he raised one hand and gave a little wave. Then he walked off the way all the others came in no hurry, and the porch light clicked off behind him. He hadn't come for the woman who didn't exist. He'd come to watch me swat at the mess he was making of everything. That's when I quit waiting on it. I'd rather take a thing apart than sit and guess, so I set the only trap I had. When the profile came back up, I answered one of the messages myself off a burner account, playing some stranger who'd seen the ad. I asked when was good. The reply came back fast. Tonight late. And he handed me my own address like he was doing me a kindness. I parked across my own street a little before 11 and sat low in the seat, feeling out of my mind the whole time. Around 1:30, a car I didn't know rolled by slow. Once, then again. Then it parked. And the man who climbed out and stood at the foot of my walk, hands loose, looking up at my dark house, was the same shape off my camera. I got his face under the quick trip glow from 2 doors down, and I half knew it. Older than his pictures like the rest of me was. But him. Rhea's careful little questions, the address she fished for, that easy week of nothing. All of it was him, building the ad before he ever had a reason to run it. I didn't get out. I sat low and watched him walk up to my dark house and stand at the door he'd aimed a month of strangers at, waiting, the way he'd waited on the camera. Then I called it in with him still on my step. The police had the footage and the accounts and enough of the rest, and he was charged. That's the only sentence he gets from me. Because here's what doesn't close. A week after, a buddy texted me a screenshot laughing, asking why I was on a hookup app over in Oklahoma City. Same face, same words, different town. I never made it. I can't get into it. I can't take it down. I can only report it and wait and watch it surface somewhere else. Some stranger wearing my face, standing in a window I've never rented, telling strangers to come by and not bother texting first. I put a real lock on the storm door and a second camera on the drive. My friends rib me, a repair guy who can't fix his own front door. I let them. It's easier than saying the true thing out loud, which is that the door was never what was broken. They still knock sometimes, not as often now, but every so often a car slows out front and somebody walks up my steps in the dark expecting a Curtis who said yes to this. And I stand on the other side of the wood, not breathing, waiting to hear them read the door and leave.
The smartest thing I did, the move I'm honestly still a little proud of, is the thing that walked me right into it. I reverse searched his photos. Everybody tells you to. Every safety article, every friend who's been burned. Check the pictures, so I checked. And what I found is the reason I don't trust my own good sense anymore. I'll call myself Corrine. I'm 29, a vet tech in Omaha, which means I spend my days reading animals that can't tell me what's wrong, and I thought that made me hard to fool. On the app, his name was Elliot. Warm, funny, a little shy about it. We'd been talking about 2 months. He never pushed to meet, never pushed for anything, and I read that as a good sign, the way you do. It was a girl at work who nudged me. She'd had a bad one, and she got quiet looking at his pictures over my shoulder at lunch, the way you'd look at a scan you didn't like. Just run them, she said. For me, so that night I did. And I felt the floor tilt, but not the way you'd think, because the photos were real. They belonged to an actual man. A thin, ordinary profile somewhere else, a different name, a few years of a real life on it. Elliot was a fake. But the guy in the pictures was a person, out there, probably with no idea his face was being used to reel in women in a state he'd never been to. I felt something almost like relief. I'd caught it, and here was this poor stranger who deserved to know. So I messaged him, the real one. I told him as gently as I could that someone had built a fake profile with his pictures, and I was sorry to be the one bringing it. He wrote back within the hour, and he was lovely about it, embarrassed, grateful, a little sad in a way that felt earned. He said it had happened once before. He said thank you for being kind enough to reach out. Most people just block and move on. We kept talking. That's the part I have to make you understand. Warning him turned into talking to him, and talking to him was easy in a way that Elliot never quite was. He was steadier. He asked about my day and remembered the answers. He never once pushed to meet, and after Elliot, God, that landed like proof he was safe. I caught myself thinking the ugly thing had been a gift, that I'd swiped toward a liar and going around the long way, found the real man underneath. I want to back up, because this is where I should have felt it and didn't. He knew things, small things. He mentioned my dog by name once, and I told myself I must have said it. He knew I ran in the mornings, that I hated the Huskers' loss that weekend, that there's a runzer I stop at that I'm a little ashamed of loving. Fine, I'm chatty. You give things away. But then, on a Thursday night, he said something about Marbles. Marbles was my cat. He died in the spring, and I had told exactly one person online about the night I sat on the bathroom floor with him. I'd told Elliot. Not this man. Never this man. And here he was, the real one, the safe one, saying he was sorry about Marbles, honey. That must have been a hard spring. I put the phone down on my kitchen counter, and I looked at it like it might move. Then I opened both chats. Elliot on one side, the real man on the other. And I read them back, hours of them, 3 a.m. by then, and I watched the two of them trade off. When Elliot went quiet for a night, the real one got talkative. When the real one had a slow day, Elliot filled it. 2 mouths. 1 hand. Never awake at the same time because a person can only run one conversation at a time, and he'd been running both of mine. The reverse search hadn't caught him. The reverse search was the second hook. He'd built that real-looking profile and left it sitting there, waiting, because a careful woman does exactly what I did. She checks. She finds the poor victim. She reaches out. And now she's talking to him on 2 lines instead of 1, and she thinks the second one is her reward for being smart. I did one thing before I stopped, because I had to be sure, and I'm not proud of how steady my hands were doing it. I told the real man a lie. A specific one, a plan I'd never mentioned to Elliot, that I was driving to Lincoln that weekend to see my sister. Just to him, just the real one. 2 days later, Elliot asked me how my sister in Lincoln was doing. Same person. There was never a rescue. There was never a poor stranger. There was one man and a spare face he kept in a drawer for exactly the woman who'd think to look. I told the girl from work what her favor had turned up. She didn't say I told you so. She just went pale and said the thing I still can't unhear, that at least mine had only wanted to talk. Hers had wanted to come over. I used to think that made me the lucky one. Now I think it only means he wasn't finished yet. I took it to the police, and I'll keep that part short because there wasn't much to it. No one had touched me. No money had moved. A man had been kind to me on the internet under 2 names. They took a report. They were decent about it. There was nothing on the end of it. Here's what it did to me, and it isn't what I expected. It's not strangers I flinch from now. I flinch from the nice ones, the patient ones. The man who never pushes, who remembers your dog, who's just so relieved you were kind enough to warn him. I never found out how close he'd gotten to the rest of it, but he knew my running route. I told the real one that, freely, because he was the safe one. I changed my running route the next morning. It doesn't help. You can't ask for a map back once you've handed it over. Everything I did right walked me 1 room deeper in. There's a night I keep going back to. Before Marbles, before I knew, the real one had finally floated coffee. Nothing pushy, just if you're ever free. And I'd said yes. I picked a place near the zoo I like because it's always crowded, and I got ready, and I was reaching for my keys when Elliot messaged me hello at the very same minute. Both of them, live, in my hands at once. I told myself it was nerves, and I didn't go. I've thought 100 times since about the version of me who did, who drove out to thank a kind stranger for being a victim too, who walked up to a table and found him already sitting at it. I don't trust my own relief anymore. That was the last thing he taught me. The relief was his too. He built it for me to feel.
My mother called to ask why I'd phoned her at 2 a.m, crying, asking her to come get me. I'd been asleep. I hadn't called anyone. But it was my voice. She was sure of it. 34 years she's known that voice, and she'd heard it break on her machine at 2 a.m, scared, saying, "Mom, please." And she'd stood in her kitchen listening to it 3 times before she called me back and got a man who had no idea what she was talking about. I'm not putting my name on this, not after what my name got used for. I cooked the line at a place in Spokane, and my world was small, and I liked it that way. The counter, the falls, a huckleberry shake from a stand I'd defend to strangers. Not much room in it for anybody. Then there was Camille. We met on an app, and it went a phone calls fast, and it stayed there. For months, and I never saw her face. And I know how that sounds now. She had a reason, and it was a good one, or it played good. She worked nights rotating, and she was way out somewhere. The signal only held a voice call, never video. The picture always froze, but the sound came through clear. So we talked. In the dark mostly, both of us winding down off our shifts. Honestly, it was the best part of my day. Her voice in my ear while I closed my eyes. I tried once months in to get her on video. Just a second, I said, even frozen. She sent back a photo instead, blurry, a woman laughing with her hand half up, and a voice note so warm and so hurt that I ended up apologizing for pushing. I know now the photo was nobody. I know the hurt was a tool. But that night I lay there feeling like the villain for asking a woman to prove she was real, and I never asked again. That was the whole trick looking back. She made wanting proof feel like the cruelty. She loved my voice back, that's what she said. She was always asking me to talk. Tell me about your day, the long version. Read me that thing. Leave me one to fall asleep to so I can hear you when we're apart. And I did. God, I did. Dozens of them. Hundreds maybe over 4 months. Me talking into a phone for a woman I trusted, saving up the sound of me like she said she wanted. She made a little game of it near the end. She'd have me say the same line twice, once soft, once like I'd gotten bad news, once like I was glad to hear from somebody. For range, she'd tease. I thought she just liked my voice in all its weathers. She was building a keyboard, and every mood I handed her was one more key. The first crack wasn't the 2 a.m. call. It came a few days before, and I didn't feel it. My bank flagged a phone order, a thing I hadn't done, and the fraud guy on the line said the caller had passed voice verification. Sounded just like you, sir, he said, a little confused. I chalked it up to a glitch. I mean, you do. Then my sister texted. Weird one. Said thanks for the voice memo, but she couldn't send money right now. Was I okay? I hadn't sent her anything. I called her and she played it for me over the phone, and I listened to myself, my exact self, my ums, the way I trail off, asking my own sister for $400, keep it between us, I'm embarrassed. I never said a word of it, but I'd said every sound in it. She'd stitched me out of the notes I gave her. That's when it turned over in my head all at once. Camille never once asked me for money. Not directly, not ever. I'd have caught that. What she wanted was the talking, the long version. The one to fall asleep to. She wasn't collecting a boyfriend. She was collecting a voice, mine, enough of it, and then she went and used it on the people who love me. And it kept going out. My manager pulled me aside that week and asked, careful, if things were okay at home, because I'd called in twice sounding like I'd been crying, and he'd scrambled to cover me. I hadn't called in. I'd been on that line both days. But there was a me on the phone giving him a reason, and he believed it. The way you believe a voice you've known for years, and I lost the shifts and a little of his trust in one stroke. A cook who can't be counted on doesn't keep the good stations. My checks got thinner over calls I never made. I came home late that Friday off a double, and before I had the lights on, I heard myself. My own voice in the dark kitchen talking, calm, low. The smart speaker on the counter mid-call, playing back a recording of me saying things I have never said, easy as anything, to somebody on the other end. And the back door was open, not wide, a few inches letting the cold in. I stood in my own doorway and listened to me talk to my house. My mother texted an hour later when I still hadn't moved much. She said she dropped the lasagna like I'd asked and let herself in with the spare. And my door had already been open, and was I all right? I'd sounded so upset on the phone. I never called her, but something with my voice had. It had called my mother, gotten her to bring the spare key to my own back door and open it. Rehearsing, I think. Seeing if the sound of me was enough to walk a person through my own lock. It was. That was almost the worst of it. They hadn't needed to send anyone. They'd sent me. My voice did the walking, my own mother did the unlocking, and the house let it in because everything here knows me. After that, I stopped waiting to understand it and started chasing it down. The number Camille used traced back to nothing you can knock on, one of those operations that runs on voices, harvests them and sells the use of them, hundreds of us at once. I gave the police what I had. The strongest thing I handed them was the voicemail still sitting on my mother's phone, my voice, telling her to open the door. I'd forgotten my key. There's a fraud case open somewhere with a number on it, and that number never turned into anything. Because none of that is the part that stays. I changed my number. I locked down every account I could find a login for, and it doesn't matter because you can change a number and you can't change a voice. Mine is out there now, copied, and a copy doesn't wear out. Somewhere a version of me is still calling people, still crying at 2 in the morning to somebody's mother, still passing for me on a bank line, in a voicemail, at a back door in the dark. I only find out it happened when someone who loves me mentions, careful, a little worried, that I'd sounded strange on the phone, and I have to ask them what I said, because it wasn't me. It's never going to be me again. The best part of my day walked out of my own mouth and it isn't coming home.